document as you go. I'm kicking myself for not doing that. It seems super stupid simple, but as if you have a process that you've done multiple times, just take a Google Doc, write out how you're doing that process. And I mean, just it can be super, super simple, like a Google Doc with a spreadsheet with descriptions and links. Like keep it simple, but document as you go and make sure you're keeping track of those documents because eventually you will want to hire. And it's so much easier to have something you can hand somebody than trying to train them on the job or do it from scratch.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7 and 8 figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Elizabeth Greene. And Elizabeth started her journey. So grew up, she was homeschooled and then went off to college for a bit, but didn't know what she wanted to do. And so she didn't end up finishing. But during that period, met her husband, and her husband's family was pretty entrepreneurial. So worked in her husband's family businesses with him for a few different businesses. And then also got into doing homeschooling with the kids. Tried a couple of businesses with her husband and her kids, and did a Amazon business, and then put that on pause while I was pregnant with twins. Picked up that business after the twins, and then also started a consulting business to help businesses be successful on Amazon. So, with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Elizabeth.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, that was a very succinct recap.
Hey, well, I have the innate ability to take everybody's life and condense it in the 30 or 45-second version of it. But with that, why don't we go ahead and unpack things a bit? And with your journey, tell us a little bit about how things got started as you were growing up being homeschooled.
Yeah. So yeah, it was fun. I attribute a lot of my self-led learning, I think, to that journey. Not that you can't learn in, traditional sense, but it definitely is a very different dynamic and tends to be very self-led, which is one of the reasons why we decided to homeschool our own children. Because I really like, we're still, I would say, more traditional and more I don't know, I think it's about like authoritative. I mean, there's, if you get really deep into the homeschool journey, like there's more like child directed learning versus like adult or authority directed learning, meaning like we still have a curriculum. There's different ways to go about it, so it's still not very much
before
that
we
way.
jump too far into your journey of homeschooling kids, because that jumps it a bit ahead. So you grew up being homeschooled, and then you went off to college for a period of time. Didn't necessarily know what you wanted to do, but during that period of time, met the husband. Is that right?
Yep, that's pretty much it. Funny enough, my husband is the cousin of my best friend, still my best friend. I would consider one of my best friends growing up. And so we took a road trip to visit her brother, who was my husband's cousin, and they worked together. And that's how we officially met, although we both sort of knew who the other one was. That was the dynamic, but not at the hey, let's date sort of capacity. So it was very cool, very interesting. I knew his family, I think, better than I knew my own at the wedding, which is kind of cool. So I looked out. I got some amazing in-laws.
Well, sounds great. So now so what did you now you say you went to college for a bit of time, you couldn't decide what you wanted to do, or didn't seem to line up quite with the thing. So what did you study during the period of time you were
Yes.
at college?
So I was studying teaching. I had intended originally to get a teaching degree. I always knew I wanted to homeschool my own children. I thought, well, that could probably come in handy if I intend to do that. But there wasn't, as far as the career, it was one that I thought maybe I could find interesting, but I really didn't have a specific attachment to it. So when it was more like it just didn't make logical sense because it wasn't a continuing a college education wasn't something that was going to help me further along in any sort of career path. It was simply going because that's what you do. Like you're supposed to finish up high school and you should be going to college. I still think that you should have a plan for your life. My personal opinions now are that college may not fit everyone's personal life goals.
No, I think that there's certainly, there's a lot of people where it's a good opportunity, even if it doesn't, and other people it's one where it may not fit or what they want to do or the direction they're going to head. And so with that, so you went to college for a period of time, met your that time, and then or met your who would be your husband, and married into that family. And I think you mentioned that your husband's family was fairly entrepreneurial, and he kind of put you into that realm of life for a period of time.
Yeah, definitely. So when we got married, his family owned and operated a paintball field up in Georgia, close to Fort Benning area, which ended up being a whole lot of fun. That was great. I essentially just kind of helped run it, like I'll run the cash register or, help run things around. That was basically my capacity, which was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And then through the week, because it's typically like a weekend business, it's very, I would say, fluid, meaning like, we want to upkeep the fields, you want to clean up stuff, but when you decide to go out and say clean the rentals, it's really up to your discretion as long as it gets done before doors open. So it was nice, it was fun, it was just a lot of support roles helping.
Now you did that kind of over what period of time did you kind of do the support roles or work with it within your husband's family's businesses?
So I would say, gosh, I mean, lines blur. So context on this is that when we got married, we were up in Georgia, and then we came down to the Ocala area in Florida, which was where my husband grew up. And then we went back up to Georgia, then came back down to Ocala. So those like, what was the time range back and forth is a little bit blurred, if I'm being honest. But the majority I like really was help supporting, I would say, was within the paintball business. And then after we got married, I got pregnant with our first child, and that was when we moved down to the Ocala area, and then he got a little bit more of a traditional job. Traditional being he went out and he worked somewhere and then came home at a standard time, versus before he definitely had, I say, standard hours, but when you work for yourself, there's a little bit more discretion as far as like when you're going to take off, or if you're going to choose to close up early or something like that.
Now husband goes off and does that. You do or support a lot of the family businesses, and at some point, and as you touched on a bit before, you got into homeschooling the kids or the family.
Yeah, so we had my first, and then I think we were back up in Georgia for my second, and then back down in Ocala for number 3, 4, and then eventually 5, which the number 5 pregnancy was twins. So it ended up having 6 kids altogether. And then homeschooling our own children started, I would say roughly my oldest was 5, because really before that, I mean, you sing ABCs at 4 years old. There's not really much more to do. 5 is technically when you start kindergarten age.
So, and how long did you homeschool them throughout all of school, or did you do that for a period of time and then they went off to normal, or I was going to say normal school public?
No, you won't offend me. I think I refer to it as normal school. It's the traditional.
Traditional is what I was probably looking for.
Yeah. So they're still homeschooled. It's been continuous ever since kindergarten. My oldest just turned 13.
Awesome.
So still very much in it.
Sounds like still in the throngs of it and doing it now. Over that period of time, I think, or as you started doing or a Amazon business or a couple businesses with your husband and kids. Walk us through a little bit of what were some of those businesses that you started or did with the husband or kids.
Yeah, so I use the term business very lightly. So my husband was, let's see, my father-in-law is a general contractor in the state of Florida, which is one of the most difficult states to be able to get your contracting license in due to the regulations around hurricanes. Like, I mean, after Andrew hit, regulations went ridiculous. It's very, very difficult. So he's maintained that. And done building off and on. So they had, I think, some side construction business. They also, when they came back down for the second and final time to Ocala, Florida, they also had started up a car lot, and then eventually ended up retailing sheds out of that same lot. So they had used cars and they had sheds, and every once in a while I would come and sit in the office for them. It was more of like a favor. I don't think I was all that great at selling, and my husband was very comfortable with it, because when it comes to sheds, they could custom order them. And so with his background of, say, growing up on job sites, he was like, oh yeah, this, or like when you put in a wedding window, you have to have a bracer for it, and you basically sit there and like measure out the shed. So for me, I'm like, I have no idea. But I'll sit there and I'll, write up whatever I need and take the notes. So I would do that off and on occasion. As you can imagine, home life with, I think, was it 4 children at that time? It's pretty robust. So that kind of kept a lot of my time. But as far as online businesses, I was constantly looking for some way to start at home income. So one of the things I think we both kind of always looked back on with fondness was the days when we ran the paintball field. And like I told you, it was very fluid, very dynamic during the week, and then also on the weekends. It's a very obviously, like, it's a relaxed environment, right? It's not like people coming in where you're trying to sell cars, or maybe a more like intensive job. It's a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of work, but a lot of fun. And so it's much easier for, say, family to help, because if you go into a paintball field, no one's going to bat an eye if there's a 10-year-old behind the counter, versus if you go into a car dealership or used cars, maybe somebody's going to look a little weird if you got a teen behind the counter. So we kind of were looking for something like that, which could potentially allow, the family to be much closer. Obviously, I was at home with the kids, homeschooling, we're all together, but we were missing him, which that's very typical in life. But we'd had a taste for something different, and we liked the something different. So a very common one, of course, is some sort of online business, right? Because that allows you to do whatever you want to do from home. And so part of that is just, the natural Googling and looking at YouTube videos and what is a good work from home something, and also something that doesn't require a lot of startup capital, which they are out there. The thing is, they're a lot of work and they take a lot of time to really get running. So one of them is, say, print on demand t-shirts, or print on demand cards to be sold on Etsy, or one of them is what's called retail arbitrage in Amazon. So retail arbitrage, I'm assuming probably a lot of your listeners know, but it's essentially going to brick and mortar stores and identifying products that could then be sold online. The avenue of being sold online in this case was Amazon.com. And so I was like dragging all 5 kids, just try to go to stores to, like, there's ways you can get things on your phone to like scan things. Okay, what is this being sold for? Is it being sold? And then try and, put those for sale on Amazon.com. So we did a little bit of that. And then that, as you can imagine, is very time intensive, and retail arbitrage is one that you have to keep the plate spinning, because if you want inventory, it's not like you're ordering it somewhere, you're going and trying to source it, which is, again, very labor and time intensive. So we were looking at the world of Amazon.com, and there's something called private label, which is essentially you take products. In essence, now private label is more akin, although it's still called private label these days, most people talk about more of like building your own brand. So it's not simply what I guess would be referred to like white labeling a product, where it's like you just slap a logo on it and it's exactly the same product. Like, people are more looking for developing sort of their own product so they could stand out in the marketplace. But so that's kind of what we were starting to work on. Did end up sourcing some products and selling them, but life got in the way with getting pregnant with twins and trying to keep 4 little ones happy and fed throughout that and schooled. So that just became pretty intensive, and that business went down just because we just had lack of time and attention. My husband was still working throughout this entire process. So that's kind of what led us, but that of course led us to the world of Amazon, which is what we're doing now, is servicing people who are selling on Amazon private label. We also have some licensed sellers to help them run their advertising is what we do now.
Awesome. Well, sounds like it's definitely been a great journey and a lot of different opportunities along the way. And so now, kind of or touched on that, the current business is to do consulting or helping other businesses be successful on Amazon after having gone through a lot of the retail arbitrage, learning a lot of things, figuring out how that works, kind of where to focus. So kind of walk us through what is the current, or how's the current business going, and kind of where do you see things headed here in the future in the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah. So it's been going really well. So yeah, the current business I would define it's you might sort of call it like a SMMA, so social media marketing. It's not really social media, but it would be a similar sort of like pay-per-click advertising management. The one I would say unique subset of that is the fact that it's all on the Amazon platform. So Amazon, as you can imagine, is a very large retailer, online retailer, and they have their own on platform pay-per-click platform. So we essentially help the brands manage that. So that's what we're doing now. As far as where it's going, I mean, it's been going good. We've been doing it for say about 5 years right now. Although to be honest, in those first early years, it was a lot of just me trying to learn in general. So I would say the typical working in the business versus on the business type thing. It really started up through just me helping to answer the sellers' questions in Facebook groups is really how I got started. Facebook groups these days are very flooded and they're honestly terrible quality these days. It's kind of ridiculous. But in the beginning, everyone would say, hey, like the ad platform was still quite new. People were still very unsure of how to do it. And I had experience in it, so I could speak to those questions, which I did. And then that led to people asking questions of like, oh, hey, do you do this? And I was like, well, I guess I could. And so it was a very like natural progression. So in the beginning, it was just me saying like, well, I guess that's how I got clients. I guess I just need to be super helpful and answer people's questions. And to be honest, that's still a lot of our marketing strategy is be super helpful and answer people's questions, only trying to do it at a much larger scale and a much higher volume. Is really what my current focus is. So these days I have a team of account managers underneath me. We have about 5 account managers managing about 30 accounts. So we're still a little bit more boutique. My interest these days is more focused on, I'd definitely say I've shifted a lot more, which I'm more excited about, the growing working on the business versus in the business function. So that's been really good. Also learning to balance that with making sure the team's supported and the work's getting done. So it's been good.
That's awesome. Well, sounds like definitely found a great business and present a lot of opportunities. Sounds like continuing to grow the business and providing an awesome service. So now, as we've kind of reached the present day of your journey and even looked a little bit as to where things are headed, great time to transition to the couple of questions I always like to ask towards the end of each episode. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I would like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What did you learn from it?
Not having, and this is something it is a personal issue with me. And when I tell my team all the time, like, this is an issue with me, so you need to get clarity from me, is me honestly having a lack of clarity in hiring. And then if you have lack of clarity, it's hard to hand that off to the team. So my first hire didn't work out. Some of it, of course, was him, because I think, some people can thrive and do well in chaos. But it was kind of like, wow, you seem like you're good at this stuff. I need help with this stuff here. Do it. Don't do that. If you're hiring for a role, it makes sense to step back and get a really clear, defined understanding of what you intend their roles to be, and what it is that you intend for them to do, and also just give them a lot of clarity as to how you intend for things to function. If they're coming into chaos, let them know it's in chaos and hire for somebody who can function in chaos. If you have it really well defined and they need to be able to follow things to the letter, be very clear on that and hire for that. So I think it was, and I've learned my lesson now. I feel like I can know within 1 to 2 weeks of somebody working with me if they're going to hack it or not. So my first issue was lack of clarity coming in, and then it took me way too long to be able to realize that it wasn't going to work long term.
No, I think that's, and I think hiring and firing is one that where you like it or not, you get to learn a lot of things as you get started on a business. And I think everybody always goes into it thinking, well, I'm the exception to the rule. I know how to hire great people, and I know how to deal with people, and I know how to read people. And there's some truth to that. I think that some people are good at that, but there's also a lot of things that you just get to learn that you really don't know it until you dive into it and learn it along the way. And no matter how you approach it, you just get to learn some of those along the way. But I do like how you hit on that kind of, there is different management, different businesses, and different cultures, and being transparent. And hey, if I'm a micromanager, let them know up front I'm a micromanager. If I am a very free spirit and I just like to give somebody loose directions and let them run with it, let them know, because everybody works differently in different environments. So I think that's definitely a great takeaway.
I think
a great
one thing I've loved, and actually my team has been really appreciative, and I've been sending it to, I'm in a hiring process now for a position, I've been sending it to the prospects, is, I don't know if you heard of like the create with like a how to work with me doc. It's basically like, hey, here's my work function. Here's how here's how I work. Here's how I expect you to work. Here's how to get the best of working with me. And I find that, again, to the point of creating clarity, and just an understanding, I find it is very helpful.
No, I think that's definitely a great piece of advice. And now we'll transition to the second question I always like to ask, which is, so now if you're talking to someone that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you give them?
Document as you go. I'm kicking myself for not doing that. It seems super stupid simple, but as if you have a process that you've done multiple times, just take a Google Doc, write out how you're doing that process. And I mean, it can be super, super simple, like a Google Doc with a spreadsheet with descriptions and links. Like, keep it simple, but document as you go, and make sure you're keeping track of those documents, because eventually you will want to hire, and it's so much easier to have something you can hand somebody than trying to train them on the job or do it from scratch.
No, I'm right there with you. And I think that, to your point, it doesn't have to be long, extensive in that, but I'm a big proponent. One of the ways that we do it is I'll just record a quick video. A lot of our forms, a lot of our training material, Matt, rather than, if I have to sit down and write it all out, drives me nuts and takes me way too long. But if I just record a quick video, and sometimes I'll just do a screen capture or grab the information or walk them through it, but documenting that along the way definitely sets people up for success there. Yeah.
Or even better, if you like, I agree with you. I hate documenting. I can record a 30-minute video, no problem. Throw the 30-minute video at your new hire and say, hey, take this and turn it into an SOP.
Yep. No, I think that's definitely a great piece. And now as we get into the world of AI, maybe at some point we can just throw it over to the AI and they'll turn it into that for you.
Eventually.
Well, now as we do wrap up the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yes. So if you are interested in being a client for whatever reason, or just interested in like, hey, the one thing we offer is free audits of ad accounts. Some people are lacking clarity as my ad strategy, what it should be to get me where I want to go. We're more than happy to do that. The best place for that is going to be the website, which is jungler.com, JUNGLR.com. However, if you're just trying to get a hold of me, best place is going to be LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I actually keep up with my DMs, even though I get a lot of them these days. So I definitely recommend going and looking me up there.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, support a great business, make a new connection. If nothing else, make a new best friend. So with that, thank you again, Elizabeth, for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you the listeners are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on a podcast, we'd love to have you. So let's go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners. Make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journeys to success. And on that note, if you ever need help along your journey with patents or trademarks or anything else to start up your business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Elizabeth, for coming on the podcast. Wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.